Hi everyone, it's the 9th weekend of lockdown in the UK, and I was about to say that for once the weather is terrible on a Saturday morning, but it has been raining and it's been very, very windy. But now, of course, the sun's shining. It looks like it did last weekend. So and hopefully it will stay this way. I prefer the wind to drop because my G5RV has been swaying around as well, but my collinear for 2 meters and 70 centimeters, as you can see right now, is when the wind blows, is swaying around quite violently at times. Now, yesterday it was swaying around and then returning back to the vertical position. This morning it's swaying around and returning back to a kind of slightly non-vertical position, as you can see there, which is slightly worrying. So something I'm going to be doing this weekend probably is fixing that. It is actually still working. I'm still transmitting on FT8 on 2 meters as we speak, and I am being heard, but yeah, that is not an optimum setup for sure. And luckily my neighbours, I think they know it fell over the other week and into my garden. It won't fall over into their garden, but there you go. That's one job I'll be doing this weekend. One other thing is this radio, and there's a lot of noise at the moment on the handband, on the 40-meter handband. I'll turn the volume down. This is the Elad FDM DUO. Some of you will be very familiar with it. I bought it years ago, well, about 4 years ago, because I like to DX on medium wave, and this at the time was probably, well, one of the best SDRs. And I also bought it because it's got a front panel, which I prefer, traditional radio, you know, with a front panel, but is a full-blown SDR. And it's had a lot of use in that respect. You can just hear now that ham a bit clearer. There's a lot of noise, static this morning. Just tune around with anyone else. You can hear FT8 no problem. There you go. So there's the FT8 signal. So anyway, so yeah, I bought this radio. Turn it down. I bought this radio for its receive capabilities, but when I got my original ham license 2 or 3 years ago, I thought, right, I'm getting on HF because this is a transceiver, 5 watts QRP, and I bought a super antenna and set it up in the back garden of my old QTH, connected to this radio, and guess what? Nobody could hear me. And since then, I'm pretty sure. Well, I'd never made an SSB voice contact using this radio. I've made hundreds of contacts using FT8 because this was the first radio I set up for FT8, but I'd never used it on voice. So, and I thought to myself a couple of days ago, I'm going to try and do that. So here it is, connected to one of my MFJ antenna matching units, which is connected to the G5RV. And last night I did actually work Romeo 5 Delta Foxtrot, a Russian station. I don't know where in Russia he is, but because his QRZ.com page is in Russian. But just goes to show that with 5 watts, well, less than 5 watts ERP, you know, it's probably more like sort of 3 watts, you can work a station, you know, somewhere in Russia. Amazing. And that has kind of inspired me to oh, there you go. So there you go. So that is, I'll turn the volume off. So that's kind of inspired me to try and make some more contacts on SSB with this little radio. It is a great little radio. The ergonomics for ham radio standalone operation are a bit shit. You know, setting it up's okay. You're sort of trawling through various menu systems and all the rest of it. Once it's going, it's going. It's interesting actually. If you actually transmit, I've set it up so that if I were to, let me just put the audio back on. 70%. If I were to just call CQ 2E0HTG, calling CQ on 40, you can see there that you can set it up to either to view the power or the SWR. CQ, 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 2E0HTG calling CQ140 QRZ. Now, my SWR at the moment is about 1.2, 1.3. Because I haven't adjusted it since yesterday, and I've changed frequency. I actually caught this Russian station on 7.16, but you get the idea. So it is quite good for once you've sort of gone through the menu systems. But it is, compared to a proper sort of full-blown transceiver, it is a bit of a pain to use. So that's the FDM DUO that I'm going to be using. I'm still doing FT8 with the FT991. This morning I've been doing 2 meters, which you can see, despite my collinear antenna blowing around in the wind. I'm just going to get it to update, so you can see that it's what I've been heard in the south of England. There's no more lifts than that. In fact, in fact, it's quite possible. No, I'm still transmitting. But what I'm going to do is, if I go to 6 meters, I actually like 6. Now I can't do 6 at the moment while I'm using the Elad, because I've been using the G5RV for 6 meters. But 6 has kind of got the it's a combination of HF and VHF. It's obviously more localized. DX on 6 meters is way more difficult than 20 or 40 meters. Which makes it just a bit more of a challenge, I suppose. And I quite like that because, getting DX on FT8 using 20 or 40, particularly if you're using any sort of power at all, is usually a walk in the park unless propagation is literally horrendous. So here you get the idea. So this was me on 6 meters yesterday. And so my signal getting down into the Canaries, into the Iberian Peninsula, southern Italy, into sort of Romania, Belarus, Ukraine, up into Scandinavia. And this is kind of typical. With a decent lift, my signal's being decoded down in the Middle East, in Israel, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia region, etc. So that's what I like about 6 meters. It's you can get out there, and it is a bit more of a challenge than just sort of like getting on 20 or 40 meters and then just going for it, because that is usually a walk in the park. Right, I'm gonna just quickly go outside now. So yesterday I set up another antenna, one that I hadn't used for a long time, because I wanted to compare it to one of my Wellbrooks loops, and you'll be familiar with it because I'm familiar with it, but I haven't used it for a long time. The Bonito MA305 E-Field antenna. I just thought the other day that because I'm so fortunate, and I am fortunate, that my garden and the area around my house is so electrically quiet compared to my old QTH, and a lot of your QTHs, I know that, because we've all suffered from electrical noise at one time or another. I thought it would be really interesting to repeat the experiment that I did a few years ago, where I took that antenna, that E-Field antenna, I took it to the woods, the DX woods that I haven't been to. Well, I have actually been to them, but not only to cycle around. And to compare it with one of my Wellbrooks loops. Now, when I did that experiment in the woods, the results were actually quite amazing. What I was hearing on the MA305 was as clear as it was on the Wellbrooks loop that I took, because obviously we all know E-Field antennas use the electric field component of electromagnetic wave, and if you've got a lot of noise, then that's what you're going to hear basically. So the signal to noise is going to be basically rubbish. But because I've got low noise here, I'm pretty sure that the performance of that E-Field antenna might be quite similar to a Wellbrooks loop. And so using the RSP DUO, I've got the Wellbrooks loop, one of my Wellbrooks loops, and the MA305 into that dual receiver. So on the left here, here's my signal on the Wellbrooks loop, and then on the right, here's the signal from the MA305, and as you can see, there's a stronger signal on the Wellbrook loop, and a better signal to noise than on the E-Field antenna. But if you actually look at the noise floor, it's as if the whole MA305 setup is a bit less sensitive, but it's actually got a lower noise floor than the Wellbrook loop in that position. I don't know if I just check out the audio. Let me unmute. That's the Wellbrook loop. I might need to turn the volume up a bit. And then so there's a difference for sure that you can see on the spectrum and you can hear, but these things are quite often frequency dependent, and it'll be interesting to see how big a difference there is between a Wellbrook loop and an E-Field antenna tonight, because the noise, although the noise here is low anyway, I mean at the moment the noise floor on on the MA305, excuse me, it's about minus 115 dBs, which isn't bad, and it's about a minus 110 on the Wellbrook in that position. But later on tonight, that could all change, and as we've seen before, that when you're comparing antennas, quite often the difference that you see is frequency dependent, and so which is worth bearing in mind. I would say. It's very easy just to sort of say, well, it's a Wellbrook loop, it's kind of like the gold standard, etc., etc., etc. And that, there's obviously there's definitely some truth in that. We all know how good the loop is, but when I've compared these antennas out in the field, out in the woods, I've actually seen very little difference in their performance at all, and in fact, in some cases, I mean, this is going back probably 3-4 years, but I'm sure in some cases that the E-Field antenna, the MA305, actually performed better than the Wellbrook. Now, I've just changed frequencies down to long wave, and here you can see the Wellbrook, a huge signal, and then the Bonito MA305, a small signal. Yeah, a small signal, but so there's a huge difference in performance that's frequency related. So if I just go back up to where were we? Let's go to there, 15250, and this is the point that when you write an antenna off, you have to be a bit careful, because there you go, 15250. So there you go. So there's another signal on HF with a much smaller difference in terms of how big that signal is. So yeah, like I said, all these things are frequency dependent. I've done this experiment before, not in a suburban environment, I suppose is what you would say, but nevertheless, it'll be interesting to compare that. And the other thing that's interesting is that overall, the E-Field antenna is not going to operate as well as a Wellbrook loop, but who knows what will happen if I give it a little bit of a help and I attach the one of my galvanic isolators to it. So does an E-Field antenna with a galvanic isolator perform as well as a Wellbrook loop in most instances? So another experiment for me to keep myself busy, occupied at the weekend. So there you go. And finally, actually, I'm going to show you guys something. I used this radio last night. It was the Harwell Amateur Radio Society HF net, and I'm still kind of like trying to figure out what I'm going to do for an antenna, transmitting antenna for 80 meters, but sorry, for 160 meters. But the radio that I'm using now to monitor that with my 30-meter long wire is this, the original kind of 1980 Sony 2001, and I think this radio's claim to fame is that it was the world's first PLL digital direct frequency access radio from 1980, and it was the first portable version. It wasn't the first PLL radio, but it was the first portable PLL digital, direct access digital radio, made by Sony, of course, the 2001. And I can remember the first time I saw this in the shop window. I've told you guys this story before, but the first time I saw this radio in the shop window, literally, I'd never seen anything like it. All I'd seen were things that looked like the Zenith Transoceanic and the sort of cheaper Binatone Worldstar. Those were the radios that inspired me. Old analog radios with maps of the world on, and then this thing turned up, and it was like the aliens had it dropped out of a window of an alien kind of spaceship. It was so kind of modern and advanced. But they do say that you shouldn't meet your heroes. And I bought that radio a couple of years ago for about 50 quid. And to be honest with you, in a way, I wish I hadn't, because it's only modest in performance at best. And I'm only saying that because I'm emotionally attached to it. It is not a very well-performing radio at all. I copied the guys from Harwell last night using it, but to be honest with you, it was a bit of a struggle. And some of them anyway. So, you know, I won't ever sell it because it only costs 50 quid, and I am emotionally attached to it because I have that memory of it from when I was a kid. But beyond that, for me at least, it's just an emotional kind of attachment to a piece of equipment. It's not here in my radio collection on merit, on performance, but that's okay because I've got a few radios like that. You know, as long as you don't need to sell them, then why would you? Do you know what I mean? Because some radios, although they don't perform very well, they make you happy by just looking at them. You know, I've got a few radios like that. So there you go. So that's it. That's the that's my weekend in the shack this weekend. There's always something to do. You know, a bit of imagination. I mean, I wouldn't be using my Elad FDM DUO for SSB sort of ham activity unless I had time to do an experiment and see how far I could get around the world on using sort of QRP levels of power. But that's what it's all about. That's why we're lucky. We've got a hobby that we can do, that we can sort of do at home and while away a few hours, you know, during this period of lockdown. Yeah, it's a complete nightmare, and you know, it's a complete tragedy, and it's a tragedy that continues every day. There are still hundreds of people dying, and when I see images on the TV of people, you know, thousands of people all going down to the beach, not socially distancing properly, you know, just crammed into a few grains of sand, it just makes me so angry that they just literally need to like stay at home and do the right thing. So you know, just my two penneth. Okay, well, guys, I think that's about it for now. Thanks for watching. Everybody keep safe. If my antenna collapses, I might do a video on that. No, I'm only joking. But keep safe, everybody, and wish you all a great weekend. Good DX. Thanks for watching. 73.